So Daniel, what do you think your vocational preferences are?
I believe that I fall under the conventional and realistic category. I say this because I can't go into something unless I have a clear goal of what I want to do. Whenever someone would ask me to do a task, I would need to know the purpose of that task. I would find it very difficult to perform the task unless I have a clear goal in my mind of what I actually want to do, as I find it very difficult to adjust to rapidly changing situations. I myself have never been much of a leader, being an introvert. I would only really socialize with others if I had to, like this group project. I've been trying to change that about myself, but it's still a work in progress. I also find myself preferring tasks and activities that prefer skill and coordination, which is where my realistic personality comes from. This involves my hobbies of games, where you go head to head with an opponent and try and outcompete one another in a battle of skill and resource management. While my current job is more like a social job, the complete opposite of what I am, being a retailer and delivery staff for Unichem, it's quite interesting for me to experience it all and just see a different perspective and see if that actually suits me or not. However, it's not something I see myself continuing once I graduate, just because it does not really actually suit who I am.
And Sam, what are your vocational preferences?
My vocational preferences are investigative and artistic. Friends and family say I'm quite a curious person when it comes to complex problems, whether family-oriented or otherwise. I'm a very curious person and like to know all the information at hand, especially when it comes to dealing with life problems or problems in general. Thus, I'm a very investigative person who likes to research different ideas and topics. When it comes to problem solving in life, I hate to think that there is some big truth that I didn't know. One of my biggest fears is to look back on my life and say that I wish I knew something when I was 22. Thus, I spend a lot of my time investigating other people's lives, problems, and mistakes. I do this mainly through discussion and books. I'm also often told that I ask too many questions, sometimes, a lot of the time, to my own detriment. When I was working at AppleCare, I had a negative work experience as my investigative nature caused me to ask the senior management too many questions in order to gain an understanding of the problem at hand, despite the fact that the information, I think the information that I was asking was essential. I'm also quite analytical and rational once I get this information, when it comes time to observe this information and make sense out of it. When problems arose at AppleCare and I had to present a solution to these problems, I really like to incorporate art, music, and other unconventional artistic themes into the presented PowerPoints to further express the ideas in question.
After hearing Daniel's and Sam's vocational preferences, Joy, what do you think yours are?
Using Holland's framework, I can understand my own personal preference as being part of the investigative/enterprising typology. Based on my experiences through working a part-time job in university, I can identify with these two types of vocational personalities. In everyday life and studies, I prefer to research ideas and analytically make conclusions based on findings. This is a major part of what I think is being a media and marketing student, taking information and coming up with critical solutions in regards to problems. Working part-time in retail, however, requires qualities that fall on the opposite end of the framework, under the enterprising category. Being in that kind of social environment is a good way of experiencing marketing and management in the real world. There is a constant interaction between myself and the customer where I'm consciously or subconsciously selling, promoting, or influencing the other person's buying behaviors. Even though my personal preference and experiences are completely different, containing combined elements of people, data, things, and ideas, I think experiencing both investigative and enterprising types has allowed me to better understand what kind of person I am individually and interpersonally. I believe this will be helpful and translate into finding a suitable job after graduation. Now moving on to Britt, what do you think your vocational type is?
For my vocational preference, I would say I fit between social and enterprising. This is largely based on my past work experience, which ranges from 2 years of childcare to 3 years of maths tutoring, which were both involved with interacting with people of all ages, and I think this fits with many of the key skills in the social category. I spend part of my weekends tutoring competitive archery, and I've always found enjoyment and delight in assisting and coaching people. That's why I fit perfectly into the social type of vocational preferences. Enterprising is what I'd call my minor, with social being my major respectively. I'm an extrovert. I spend more time away from home, either at competitions or at mates' places. That's how it's always been for me. For me, this plays into the enterprising area, for meeting people and encouraging others, although like most people, public speaking is still not one of my strengths. In my past job as child caregiver, I did spend all my time planning activities for holiday programs, and with my other job, archery coaching, I'd like to say I'm really good at organising people.
In the second part of this video, we will discuss strategies to assist for a smooth transition from university to the workforce. With the stress of having to find a job in such a competitive market, it often becomes hard for a student to transition into the work life. In this section of the video, Daniel and I will be explaining the issues and problems that students face when transitioning to the workforce and creative ways of overcoming these setbacks. Firstly, we can identify three main problem areas as being change in culture, lack of experience and skills, and inflated expectations. It is important to understand your vocational type. This means establishing interests and strengths, which will not only help graduates look for jobs in areas they are passionate about, but also teaches them which roles will fully utilize the most of their capabilities. In order to solve the issue about change in culture, graduates should be intuitive and clearly communicate with workers and managers to fully understand what is required of their role. By working part-time jobs or internships while in university, students can develop skills which will help their careers after graduation. Constantly looking and evaluating your vocational preferences is also important, as like our interests, our vocational preferences could be affected by changes in our lifestyles, and therefore, since our vocational preferences are subject to change over time, we should be constantly evaluating the possibility of change.
I believe it is important for newcomers not to have inflated expectations while applying for a job. It is important for them to research a company and to understand that company's work environment without all the expectations that the company or they themselves might have. This might mean they have to involve themselves by talking to employees who have worked at or are currently working at said business. I believe it is important for a newcomer to keep an open mind while entering the workforce, as things might not be the way they expected, and to not expect things to play out the way that they were expecting, as the workforce can be quite different behind the scenes than it just simply is at face value, observing it from the outside. If someone was to enter the workforce with really inflated expectations and then have those expectations not be met by the workforce, it may heavily discourage them from continuing working at the firm or even working in general without seeing why the firm did not meet those expectations in the first place. I believe that these strategies are key to a successful transition from university to work. By finding a suitable first job that is easy to settle into, it paves the way for a successful career for all newcomers going into the workforce. Often employers look for both experience related and unrelated to their specific area. But also a key element they look for is whether the candidate has the characteristics which they think lines with their company or work ethics. To help combat this issue, I would say it's important for newcomers to the workforce just graduating from university to adventure into groups and clubs in their area, even those which do not seem appealing to them at first. It is important that they build confidence and the ability to work with others and in groups, as this is an important attribute in any workplace environment. Employers look for this kind of engagement as it shows them that the newcomers have the experience involving the communication with people and having the ability to problem solve in groups, as well as being able to step outside of their own comfort zones. Another way they could increase their experience is to attend workshops or classes that specialize in the type of work that they want to apply for. There's no better way to gain experience than to simulate the exposure under the watchful eyes of an industry professional.